Shocking truth. Why older women must avoid young men after 3 a.m., you won't believe what happens. The clock struck 3, a time when shadows stretched long and whispers became more than just whispers. In the dimly lit corners of Lou's bar, an aura of danger danced through the air. Older women, sipping their drinks, unknowingly walked into a trap where age and attention clashed violently with reckless youth. The kind of night where laughter echoed like a haunting bell, warning those who dared venture too close. Bodies moved, drinks spilled, and eyes flickered nervously. Out of nowhere, a strange chill swept through the bar. Women felt it first, a creeping sensation, like icy fingers trailing down their spines. Then, a piercing scream shattered the night. A woman, her face ashen, stumbling back as if she'd seen a ghost. She pointed wildly at a group of young men, their laughter booming, oblivious to the chaos unraveled behind them. Why were they so different? Why did her gut twist in warning? Rumors buzzed like angry bees. Tales circulated about the dark side of late-night encounters. However, that night, the tension escalated. A young man, lean and arrogant, sauntered over, smirking as he caught the gaze of a woman twice his age. She felt a jolt, her instincts screamed for her to turn away, yet she couldn't shake the strange allure. What was it about the way he looked at her? The excitement blended into danger, intoxicating and terrifying all at once. Suddenly, a table flipped over, glasses shattering like fragile dreams. The chaos around felt electric, crackling with fears that loomed beneath the surface. A cold sweat broke out over the women, their hearts raced, adrenaline pumping like a wild river threatening to overflow its banks. Was this all just a bad dream? Or was it something more sinister that lay waiting in the shadows? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the night deepened, shadows twisted and turned. The air thickened and hung heavy with unspoken words and fears. A woman stepped forward, her heart pounding, drawn toward the young man's reckless smile. But a gut-wrenching sensation gripped her. Was this encounter her liberation or her undoing? The room held its breath, waiting, teetering on the edge of a dangerous cliff. What secrets would unravel next? The bar throbbed with tension as the young man's smirk widened. His confidence radiated an unsettling magnetism that pulled at the woman's senses. Was it just the allure of youth or something darker that lurked beneath? Her thoughts raced, battling against the lure of what could be. A collective gasp rustled through the crowd as the first punch landed. The young man had taken a bold step forward, and in a flash, he dove into the fray, muscles rippling beneath his tight shirt. The older women watched, eyes wide with disbelief. What had prompted this sudden surge? They'd come for a night of fun, a fleeting escape, not this savage reality. The chaos engulfed Lou's bar. Shouts erupted, chairs clattered against the floor, and someone's glass shattered against the wall with a deafening crash. The laughter turned into shrieks of panic. Yet, the young man reveled in it, his eyes gleaming, each movement fluid and intentional as if he thrived on the escalating chaos. Fear surged through the older women. They exchanged frantic glances, questions bubbling in their chests. Should they leave? Should they jump in? With hearts pounding, they knew this wasn't what they signed up for. However, the magnetic energy shifted. Seized by an unshakable thrill, the night transformed from mere escapism to a deadly game. The bar's dim lights flickered ominously, reflecting the wild frenzy. One woman, Amy, whose years had carved strength into her features, felt a flicker of indignation. "We need to do something," she shouted, gathering her courage, the heat of desperation sparking a strange resolve. But before she could act, another figure entered the scene. A tall, disheveled man in a worn leather jacket stepped in. He moved with purpose, eyes locked onto the chaotic scene unfolding. The air thickened with uncertainty as he started toward the young man. "This isn't the way," he barked, voice cutting through the noise like a knife. The crowd fell silent at his unexpected authority, minds racing. Who was this savior? Was he friend or foe? The young man halted, a flicker of irritation crossing his features as he gauged the newcomer. Their eyes locked, and a tense standoff ensued, two forces ready for a clash. The atmosphere had shifted again, electricity crackling as if the air was charged for confrontation. Amy watched, feelings of dread and curiosity coiling into a tight ball in her stomach. This one act, the man challenging the chaos, unearthed memories she'd buried deep. The way he stood tall reminded her of a life once lived, choices she'd made in the shadows of her past. But in that moment of reflective struggle, the young man suddenly lunged. The onlookers gasped. Amy found herself unable to look away. What would happen next? Would the chaos devolve further, or could this mysterious stranger bring a semblance of order? Amy felt a pulse in her chest, a warning that whispered stark truths she wasn't ready to face. Behind her, muffled discussions broke out. "This is insane, what do we do?" As her heart raced, the unease mingled with a flicker of hope. If the fight escalated, she would have to choose a side. The room thrummed with the clamor of uncertainty. With her heart pounding like a war drum, she knew the next decision she made could change everything. Would she stand back or step forward? Would she confront the chaos or turn away? The lights dimmed, the pulse of urgency growing louder. What awaited them in the escalating night? The moment hung in the air, a fragile thread. The young man lunged forward, and the tension snapped like a taut wire. Amy flinched, the chaotic fight breaking out again with violent intensity. Fists met flesh, and the bar erupted, a cacophony of rage and chaos. The older women stood paralyzed, eyes wide, hearts racing. But Amy felt something stir, a long-buried instinct rising. Suddenly, she thought of her younger self, the girl who had taken risks, who had danced with danger. It was intoxicating, just like this moment. "Stop it!" she shouted, her voice breaking through the chaos. But her words were drowned out by the clamor of bodies crashing together and the sharp clang of a stool hitting the ground. She had to act. The tall, disheveled man seemed like a beacon of hope, his sturdy presence disrupting the chaos around him. He was trying, struggling to maintain control. But the young man wasn't fazed, his smirk returning even as he absorbed the force of the stranger's presence. The man lunged too, stepping between the fighters, arms raised like a peacekeeper. "You think this is a game?" His voice boomed, reaching into the corners of the bar where fear resonated. The younger man's eyes narrowed, embers of anger igniting his gaze. "Get out of my way!" he barked, swinging a fist that narrowly missed the man's jaw. Amy felt her heart race, mirroring the alcohol-laden thrill that coursed through the crowd. Everyone was now caught in a twisted gladiatorial arena. With the chaotic backdrop of shouting strangers, she could feel her own pulse quickening, drowning in uncertainty. Voices around her surged with mixed emotions: disgust, fear, a strange fascination. The bar shuddered with energy as the two men grappled, swaying precariously like trees in a storm. The disheveled man's expression hardened, his focus unwavering as he struggled to subdue the chaos. And still, there was that sense of impending doom lurking just beneath their actions. The chaos reached a fever pitch. Screams pierced the air, echoing like sharp daggers. Amy's insides twisted into knots as she caught sight of a glass shattering against the floor and the fiery intensity in the young man's unwavering gaze. The leather-clad man's resolve stood strong, but for how long? It was then that Amy caught a glimpse of something gleaming in the younger man's hand, a glint of metal. Panic surged through her, a visceral jolt. Was it a knife? The bar's fluorescent lights momentarily caught it, flashing danger like a notification of doom. "Everyone, get back!" the disheveled man roared, raising a hand. But Amy didn't move. She felt anchored to the spot. Her heart was a drum, pounding fierce and unforgiving. Memories flooded her mind, the reckless nights, choices made when adrenaline ruled. Time slowed as she contemplated the collision of fear and instinct. How could she just stand there? But the decision was paralyzed by the fear of what could happen. A knife run wild, chaos unleashed. The hairs on her arms stood tall as she took in the crowd, their faces twisted in shock. Everyone was holding their breath, a collective gasp weaving through the tension. Then, in one breathtaking instant, the disheveled man lunged a second time, arms catching the young man off guard. Would he disarm him? Or was this just the start of something darker? A hush fell over the bar like a brewing storm, anticipation thickening the air. What was she willing to risk to intervene? With her mind racing in 1,000 directions, she understood the risk of claiming her place in this conflict. But just as suddenly, the young man's full weight came crashing down on the stranger. She gripped the edge of the bar, a decision pulsating through her veins. Now or never, she whispered to herself, legs starting to move forward. But the crowd surged again, a wave of panic as glass shattered and chairs toppled. Could she really dive into this? And what awaited her on the other side of that choice? As the chaos swirled, the air thick with uncertainty, Amy prepared to cross into the unknown. The crowd recoiled, a wave of bodies pushing against one another, desperately trying to escape the uncertainty that hung like a thick fog. Amy could feel the heat of the clashes, the explosive tension sparking like fire in her veins. She had to break through this barrier of fear, to pull herself away from her stagnant position. Somehow, she had to step into the chaos, taking a breath fueled by adrenaline. Amy glanced over the bar. The disheveled man was grappling with the young man, each breath labored under the weight of tension and fury. Their bodies twisted and turned, the world around them blurring into a mess of shouting faces and flailing limbs. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but something deeper drew her closer, a compulsion she couldn't ignore. Suddenly, the young man lifted his arm, the gleam of metal bright and threatening. Time seemed to freeze as Amy's heart raced, panic clawing at her throat. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath reverberating like a drum echoing in the dark. "Someone stop him!" she shouted, her voice straining against the chaos. But what could she do? She was just one person lost in a sea of panic and fury. With a final glance at the crowd, she pushed her way through, wading into the fray, a striking figure against the chaos. Amy's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She was alive in a way she hadn't felt in years, the thrill of the moment pulling her forward. Every step felt like a declaration of freedom, of stakes that couldn't be ignored. But just as she slipped between the writhing bodies, a sudden upheaval sent her sprawling to the floor. Impact echoed through her, knocking the wind from her lungs. She gasped for a moment, dazed, stomach flipping with horror at the sight of their struggle just a few feet away from her. Then it happened. With a forceful shove, the disheveled man finally pushed the young man back, but in his stumbling, Amy caught a glimpse of his injury, a deep, fresh gash running down the young man's arm where the blade had nicked him. Instead of retreating, a manic grin spread across the youth's face as he met the man's wide-eyed stare, wild and defiant. "You think you can stop me? You don't know what I'm capable of," he barked, voice laced with mania, almost daring the man to try. The air thickened, suffocating with dread, while Amy's heart raced. Everything was unraveling before her. The knife glinting with malice. The victor seemed to have lost his grasp on reason, the chaos igniting a darkness born of desperation. More shouts erupted as people scrambled for cover. Finally, Amy found her feet, each nerve ending lit with urgency. "I can't let this happen," she thought, gaining momentum. She wasn't about to just stand by and witness a tragedy unfold. But where should she focus her energy? Should she shield the disheveled man who fought so bravely? Or stop the reckless young man, whose rage was spilling over with reckless abandon? She hesitated. Hesitation could be her undoing. Would her next move make the situation better or plunge it deeper into madness? that was the moment she locked eyes with the young man, a swirling storm of chaos and hatred reflected in the depths of his gaze. It was then she understood, there was a decision to be made. With the stakes rising and danger looming just a heartbeat away, Amy took a step toward the madness, but just then, the bar's door flew open. A gasp swept through the crowd. Was it safety or further chaos that stood waiting just outside? The door swung open wider, revealing a dark figure silhouetted against the fluorescent lights from the street. The crowd hesitated, their panic momentarily frozen as every gaze shifted toward the entrance. Shadows danced on the face of the newcomer, obscuring any immediate identification. Then the glow of a neon sign flickered, illuminating a broad-shouldered man in a tattered leather jacket. His presence felt magnetic, pulling the attention of the chaotic scene like a black hole. "What the hell is going on here?" His voice boomed, shaking through the trembling crowd. Amy seized on the moment, her heart pounding against her ribcage. This could be the distraction she needed to intervene. The young man's crazed eyes flickered toward the newcomer, confusion breaking into his manic rage. He tilted his head, studying the man in the doorway, and for the first time, the wild energy around him stilled. "Stay out of this!" The young man screeched, his voice shrill with defiance. He brandished the knife, the metal flashing dangerously, catching the light like a beacon of impending doom. The newcomer took a single step forward, holding up a hand in a gesture of calm. "I'm not here to start trouble, just trying to understand." His voice slowed, steady, each word drawing the tension taut like a bowstring. But chaos erupted anew. The disheveled man lunged forward, sensing the opening, perhaps emboldened by the newcomer's arrival. The knife glinted again, slicing through the thick air. Amy barely had time to react. She bolted forward, instinctively throwing herself between the two men. The world tilted. Someone screamed. She felt the rush of air as bodies collided, the heat of rage brushing against her cheek, and then with a yelp, the young man stumbled back, narrowly avoiding a confrontation but not before another frantic swipe of the blade caught her shoulder, a sharp pain that spread rapidly through her body. Time froze. Eyes widened, gasps filled the room as the young man began to retreat, wild uncertainty taking over his face. Amy staggered but stood her ground, biting her lip against the fiery sting in her arm, breathing heavily. Blood seeped through her shirt, vivid against the fabric, shocking the crowd into complete silence again. "Someone call for help." A voice shouted from the back, it sliced through the stillness, and suddenly there was movement. Someone rushed toward her, pushing through the throng. The leather-jacketed man's demeanor shifted rapidly from curious to lethal. "You've made a mistake," he growled at the young man, who was now frantically glancing around for an exit. "You think this is a game?" Amy felt dizzy, reeling from the pain and confusion, the world blurring at the edges. Voices faded, and a thick haze enveloped her thoughts. She was torn between the need to confront the threat and the realization that blood was pooling beneath her palm, warm and sticky. With renewed urgency, the newcomer lunged forward, intercepting the young man as he tried to dart past. "You want to escape," he said, voice low and raw. The mood shifted, tension tangling horrifically as they grappled once more. The crowd murmured, caught in a web of fear and anticipation. Amy gasped, trying to focus. "Stop. Just stop." Her voice cracked, she felt her strength wavering. Before her eyes, moments turned unreal, each second stretching into eternity, and then, out of the corner of her eye, she caught a flash of movement. Something or someone else was approaching in the shadows outside the bar's doorway. Was it ally or foe? Panic bloomed anew in her chest, threatening to choke any bravery she possessed. "Please," she whispered softly, barely audible above the din. "Help." But who would answer? When the door swung open fully, a new figure stepped into the fray, shattering the tension. An unfamiliar face with a familiar intent. Were they there to save her? Or to plunge the chaos deeper into darkness? The realization that her peril was far from over gripped her cold. With everything she feared hanging in the balance, something began to shift and stir, a lingering Question, dangling dangerously, just out of reach. What would the next moment bring? The new figure stepped into the bar's harsh light, revealing a woman clad in a sleek black outfit that clung to her every curve. Her face was determined, piercing eyes scanning the room like a hawk searching for prey. She walked with an intensity that demanded attention, yet a strange calmness surrounded her. "Get back. Now!" she commanded, and her voice held an authority that cut through the panic like a knife. The crowd stirred nervously, exchanging looks as the leather-jacketed man squared off against the wild young man. The newcomer, seeming unfazed by the chaos, pressed forward. "Let me handle this," she said, her gaze shifting to Amy, whose vision blurred as she struggled to stay upright. "You need to sit down. Now." Before Amy could respond, the leather-jacketed man tightened his grip on the struggling young man, breathing heavily as if the weight of the world rested upon him. The tension hung in the air like a thick fog. It was as if the whole room held its breath in anticipation of what would happen next. "Who are you?" he growled at the new woman, eyes narrowing. "A friend," she replied, the word rolling off her tongue with a hint of challenge. "Not your enemy. But if you don't let him go, I will make you regret it." With a quick, practiced movement, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device, an unfamiliar shape that glinted ominously under the lights. Amy's heart raced. What was she holding? A weapon? "Back off!" the young man yelled again, launching into another desperate frenzy to escape. In his madness, he swiped at the leather-clad man with the knife again, but this time, the sharp motion seemed to backfire. The two men collided heavily, sending them both to the floor. The noise echoed through the bar, and Amy's vision began to fade. Then sharp, clear pain jolted her back to reality as blood welled from her shoulder. She let out a whimper, gripping her arm, the sensation of warmth mingling with fear tightening around her throat. "Help her!" the newcomer called, gesturing to the crowd, and 3 people rushed towards Amy. "What is wrong with you? Get help, now!" What do you expect us to do?" a shaky voice called back from the crowd. "We're not paramedics. Just do something." She snapped, her eyes never leaving the tangled mess on the floor. "That boy is about to make a terrible mistake." With a swift motion, she knelt to the side, ready for the struggle, and for the first time, Amy saw the faintest flicker of doubt cross the leather-jacketed man's face. There was something in the way he moved that suggested even he sensed the urgency escalating in the moment, and then, without warning, the commotion amplified. The young man, now visibly rattled, turned to the door, seemingly looking for an escape route. White-knuckled, he glanced back at the newcomer, eyes wide and frantic. "I'm not going back to that place," he shouted, his voice erupting in pure terror. A pulse of understanding swept through Amy. He was trapped, not just physically but mentally, like a cornered animal. But then, something flashed in his gaze that sent chills down her spine. Was it fear or something darker? Suddenly, the door swung open again. A larger figure emerged, overshadowing everyone, the silhouette practically swallowing the light behind. All eyes turned as he stepped inside, his presence demanding attention. "Enough!" he boomed, and the tension in the room shifted once again. Like a gust of wind, the air thickened with uncertainty, and Amy felt her heart thudding wildly. What was happening now? Who was this new figure, and what did he want? "Get ready for a ride," the newcomer murmured to herself, and in that moment, Amy could only wonder which path this storm was about to take. Another layer of dread unfurled inside her as time slipped away, each heartbeat threatening to unravel the chaos anew. Would the next moment offer salvation or damnation? The newcomer's voice echoed through the bar, a chilling command that seemed to grip everyone in its icy hold. The larger figure stepped further into the light, and as the shadows receded, Amy could finally see his face, hard, with features etched by a life of conflict. There was a deep scar running down one side of his cheek, a stark reminder of battles fought and lost. "Step away from him," he ordered, his deep voice tremoring with authority. The leather-jacketed man flinched, his grip loosening just a fraction. The wild young man paused, hope flaring in his wide eyes, an instinctual belief that maybe this newcomer was the salvation he so desperately needed. "Who the hell are you?" The leather-jacketed man spat, adrenaline pumping his veins. "Someone who has had enough of this," the larger man replied, gesturing towards the chaos that had engulfed the bar. "That kid is under my protection, and you're making a mistake." For a heartbeat, silence hung thick as everyone processed the sudden shift. The air felt electric, charged with uncertainty. Amy wanted to scream, to warn them all about the potential storm brewing beneath the surface. She could feel her blood seeping through her fingers, each drop a reminder of her vulnerability amidst the turmoil. "Listen, I'm not going anywhere," the leather-jacketed man retorted, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "I've got business to settle." "What you have is a death wish," the newcomer countered, taking a step forward. A ripple of tension shifted in the room as the atmosphere crackled, thick with unsaid words. The wild young man, still trembling with fear, edged back, scanning the room for allies that weren't there. Amy's heart raced for him. What could he do? He was caught in a trap of his making, and it would not end well if he continued on this reckless path. "Get the hell out of here while you still can." The newcomer barked, his eyes darting between both men, assessing the situation. The crowd shifted nervously, whispering amongst themselves, casting glances between the escalating standoff and Amy, the girl poised on the edge of collapsing. Just then, the wild young man let out a desperate scream, a raw, primal sound that echoed through the rafters. "They'll come for me. You don't understand." The chaotic screams filled the bar, harmonizing with the tension that darkened every corner. "It's going to be all right. No one is going to hurt you," the newcomer called out, his voice softening as he attempted to reach out to the young man. But his words clashed against the raw frenzy of fear emanating from the other two. "Amy." The panic-stricken face of a stranger broke through the haze. "We need to get you out of here. You're bleeding." "I can't leave." "Not yet," Amy replied, her voice wavering. She couldn't tear her gaze away from the scene unfolding in the center of the room. The air felt thick with something foreboding, a darkness that foretold chaos if things continued down this path. Suddenly, the leather-jacketed man lunged, and the room exploded in chaos. Chairs tipped over, and bodies collided as the crowd surged back, panic and confusion twisting like a storm in their midst. "No!" the newcomer shouted, quickly moving towards the scuffle, dropping the device from her pocket, which landed with a soft thud against the floor. A steady light began to pulse from it, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Amy could feel her heart seize in her chest as she saw the chaos spiral. This wasn't just a bar brawl, it was something more. A voice cut through the din, low and steadied, "You have no idea what you're getting into." The larger figure turned his gaze toward the glowing device. And that's when Amy realized the answers she sought were tangled in the chaos about to unravel. What lay beneath the surface, waiting to break free? Would they all survive the clash, or would the storm consume them whole? In that charged moment, the answers felt dangerously close, teetering on the edge of revelation. The light pulsed, creating a hypnotic dance against the walls, and for a split second, everything froze. The urgency in the room surged like a tide forced back by a dam, held in check by the unknown. All eyes shifted between the leather-jacketed man and the newcomer, who stood resolute, his frame blocking the wild young man, a living shield in a whirlwind of chaos. The leather-jacketed man snarled, "What is this? Some kind of joke?" He glanced at the device where it lay glowing on the floor. "You're playing with fire, buddy." "No, I'm trying to save lives," the larger man shot back, jaw clenched. The tension electrified the air, and just then, a muted thud came from the bar as someone dropped a glass, sending shards skittering across the floor. It echoed like a gunshot, slicing through the crowd's anxiety. With a sudden burst of energy, the wild young man broke free from his moment of indecision, eyes wide and wild, and bolted toward the door. "I have to get out. They're coming for me." His voice cracked with desperation, urging the others into motion. "No!" the newcomer roared, lunging after him. The sudden shift sent a ripple through the crowd, a wave of panic flooding the space as the other patrons backed away instinctively. Amy felt a tight knot form in her stomach. "Someone stop him!" she screamed, her voice wobbling with dread. But in the ensuing chaos, her plea was lost. The wild young man crashed into the door, throwing it open with a roar of defiance, pulling the outside night into the fray. Starlight spilled in, a false hope in an otherwise darkened world. The danger was not just at the bar, it lurked beyond, waiting to pounce. The newcomer sprinted past the leather-jacketed man, determination etched in his features. He knew the stakes, he could see it in the wild young man's eyes. That glint of terror. He couldn't let him go alone, not into whatever awaited him in that dark abyss. Amy tried to follow, but legs felt heavy, weighed down by shock and fear. She gripped the edge of the bar as though it could be her rock in this storm. "No, don't leave me," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the chaotic shouts. Just then, the leather-jacketed man let out a dark laugh that sent chills racing along Amy's spine. "Do you really think you can save him? You have no idea what you're dealing with." And as if on cue, a low hum reverberated through the ground, shaking the very foundation of the bar. Amy's heart raced as she glanced toward the glowing device still pulsing on the floor. It was more than just a light, it was the key to everything. In that moment, as the newcomer stormed outside, he caught the wild young man halfway into the night. "Stop!" he yelled, grabbing his arm. "You don't know who's out there." The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy with implication. Amy felt the weight of those words grip her chest tight. She leaned forward, trying to see what awaited them beyond the threshold. Suddenly, a dark figure emerged from the shadows, a silhouette so sharp it cut the night. It stepped into the glow of the bar, revealing a threat more terrifying than anyone had expected. Fear surged through Amy, her breath hitching painfully in her throat as a perilous silence enveloped the crowd. They stood frozen, caught between the chaos inside and the looming darkness outside. Then the figure laughed, a low rumble tinged with malice. "Did you really think you could escape?" As dread washed over her, Amy realized the horrifying truth: the storm had only just begun, and they were all caught in its eye. Would they find a way to confront the terror, or would they be swept away by the very forces they feared? With every heartbeat, the night promised secrets that remained to be uncovered, unanswered questions that shimmered just out of reach. The darkness loomed just beyond the threshold, thick and palpable, wrapping around the newcomers like a suffocating cocoon. The wild young man's breath came in ragged gasps as he wrestled against the grip of the man who had tried to save him. "No!" he cried, his voice straining. "Let me go. You don't understand." The leather-jacketed man stepped forward, a malevolent grin stretching across his face. "Oh, but I do," he said, his tone dripping with amusement. "Better to bring the storm to you than to face it alone." Amy's heart pounded as she watched the scene unfold like a horror movie. She wanted to scream, to rip herself from the bar and rush to them, but her feet felt glued to the floor. Suddenly, the hum of the device intensified, a hard beat resonating with her heartbeat, echoing with urgency. "What's happening?" someone murmured from the crowd, but no one dared to move. Tension hung thick as they exchanged fearful glances. The dark figure visible in the doorway, no longer just a shadow but a palpable threat, stepped further into the light, revealing sinister details that twisted Amy's stomach. It wore a mask, shrouding its features, but even that couldn't disguise the glint of cruel delight in its eyes. A voice, cold and smooth as ice, sliced through the air. "You've crossed into a world that isn't yours to wander." The leather-jacketed man chuckled, turning back to the device on the floor. "And it's about to get much worse." He knelt beside the pulsating light, studying it with a manic intensity. The wild young man's eyes widened, and without thinking, he yanked free from the newcomer's grip. He dashed back toward the shelter of the bar, colliding with Amy, sending them both to the floor. Panic surged through her veins as she registered the chaos spilling around them. Get down! The newcomer shouted, his voice piercing through the pandemonium. He rushed to cover them, a wall against whatever horror awaited them. The leather-jacketed man glanced back and smiled, exposing a gleeful malice. You think you can hide from what is coming? No one escapes fate. The masked figure stepped forward, each stride precise and deliberate. It raised a gloved hand, revealing a blade that shimmered menacingly in the dim light. An unholy thrill coursed through Amy, filling her with dread and adrenaline. Just then, the device erupted with blinding light, illuminating the entire room in a moment of raw intensity. Screams erupted as the reality of their situation crashed down. Amy squinted against the brightness, heart racing. Was this the climax of their nightmare or merely the prelude? Everyone, run! She yelled, her voice echoing through the chaos. But no one moved. They were transfixed by the brightness, some shielding their eyes, others transfixed by the shadowy figure that seemed to absorb the light, growing more menacing with each second. The wild young man gritted his teeth, his resolve reigniting. We have to fight. We can't just wait to be picked off. Fight? Against that? Amy gestured toward the dark figure, a wave of disbelief crashing over her. The newcomer, eyes locked on the glowing device, shouted back, "That's the answer. We need to harness it." Suddenly, the device flickered, the pulsing slowing, casting eerie shadows over their faces and igniting fear in their hearts. In the pause, Amy glimpsed something within its light visions of the masked figure, blurred but vivid and horrifying. The truth of who it was clawed at her mind, but the chaotic noise drowned out her thoughts. Was it truly just a figure in a mask, or something much more sinister? Everything hinged on the device, and they had to figure it out before it fell into the wrong hands. The ideas swirled like smoke as Amy felt the weight of the moment pressing down. There was no turning back. In the swirling chaos, a scream broke free, and the darkness beyond the door swirled closer, hungry and relentless. They had precious little time to decide, unite or perish. As the light flickered again, questions of loyalty, survival, and truth loomed ahead. Somewhere in that maelstrom, an unsettling revelation lingered. What if saving one meant sacrificing another? The chaotic dance of bodies in Lou's bar came to a sudden halt as the bright pulsating light from the device filled the air like electricity. Everyone held their breath, suspended between fear and defiance. The wild young man, now unified with a desperate hope, turned to Amy, their eyes mirroring a shared resolve. Their fate, inexplicably intertwined, clung to each heartbeat. Could they harness the very power that threatened to engulf them? Grab the device! Amy shouted to the newcomer, who remained steadfast, blocking the encroaching darkness. The leather-jacketed man seized the moment, lunging toward the device, but slow to comprehend the collective force gathering against him. Don't let it drop! He boomed, urgency surging through the crowd as if they could will their outstretched hands to freeze time. The wild young man's pulse raced. We have to fight, to take control. Amy felt it too, that primal roar echoing inside her. Fear and adrenaline intertwined into a fierce unbreakable knot, edging them toward action. They surged forward as a unit, a desperate tribe clinging to survival against mounting dread. The shadowy figure with the mask loomed partially swallowed by the light, its piercing gaze boring into the crowd, a chilling reminder of abandonment and darkness. You think you can defy fate? It hissed, voice cutting through them like a blade. The laughter of the leather-jacketed man rang out, cruel and jeering. You really think they'll choose to save you over your own self-interest? But the truth stuck with them like glue, and a resolute defiance shook off their fear. They couldn't let the shadow win, and they couldn't let the chaos claim either of them. Finally, with a valiant push, the wild young man dove toward the device, arms outstretched like a hawk capturing the wind. As his fingers brushed against the surface, the pulsing light flared, a shockwave reverberated out, knocking the leather-jacketed man back. The crowd gasped as a blast of energy exploded forth, illuminating faces with a surreal brilliance. The dark figure screeched, stumbling backward in the wake of the force. What is this? Its voice wobbled, full of confusion and rage. "Freedom!" Amy shouted, the words spilling from her lips like sweet nectar. They had seized control, unlocking a profound potential within that seemed to tether them to something beyond themselves. The energy coursed through their veins like wild horses, unstoppable, fierce. "I'm not going back!" The wild young man screamed defiantly, standing solid with newfound strength. They could all sense it now, their bond, their unity in purpose, forged in this very moment. The dark figure faltered, and for the first time, fear flickered within its shrouded gaze. The crowd surged around them, embers of hope igniting as they joined the chant, "No more fear. No more darkness." And just like that, the atmosphere shifted. The mask-wearing figure unraveled, shadows fading before the furious glow of their unity and resolve. The leather-jacketed man roared, but even his rage couldn't withstand the rising tide. "Push through. Turn it against them." The urgency exploded across the air like sparks flying from a flame. The wild young man, fueled by the momentum they had built, shouted, "Together." He locked eyes with Amy, the connection between them rich with purpose. Every ounce of strength they had amassed poured into one final push. They thrust their collective will toward the pulse of the device. The world erupted in light as the energy crescendoed, crashing against the masked figure in a blinding spectacle. It was as if the very essence of their spirits merged into one single ray, a vortex of hope and determination against the chaos that held them captive for too long. And then the weight of dread fell silently away. The dark figure screeched, arching backward, its form destabilizing until finally it crumbled, a cascade of shadows evaporating before them. The leather-jacketed man fell silent, his defeat echoing in the dissipating air. Exhaustion swept through them like a wave, but the freedom that rushed in behind. It was exhilarating. The room filled with a stunned silence, the vibrations of disbelief hung palpably in the air. Women stood together, joined by the thrill of the night, grasping at each other's hands, smiling. They felt an instinctive shoulder against skepticism, a bond where once there was only fear. Amy turned to the wild young man beside her, both breathless and wild-eyed, tasting the sweetness of survival. "We did it," she whispered, cheeks flushed. He returned her stare, a smile breaking free like dawn shining through the night. They had reached the other side of chaos, no longer caught up in uncertainty but reminders to each other that life, despite its stormy seas, could ignite a fire so fierce. They were embers resurrected from doubt. "Let us get out of here," he said, taking her hand. Together, they began to move, threading through the bar, past the wreckage of fear, toward liberation. Cheers erupted around them as patrons hugged one another, realizing they had conquered the darkness together. The air hung heavy with possibility, where shadows dared not tread any longer. Amy felt warmth bloom in her chest, hope reborn, finally free of the burdens that defined them, ready for whatever came next. As they stepped outside into the cool night, the stars twinkled overhead, seemingly twinkling with understanding. "Are you ready for the next adventure?" the wild young man asked. She nodded, a lightness filling her, wiping the last remnants of fear away. Together, they strode bravely into the unknown, hearts aflame with purpose, and as the first rays of dawn broke the horizon, their laughter echoed through the streets. They were alive, truly alive, and they would not let anything dim their spark again. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Trust me, you don't want to be left behind. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your love for the story unfolding right before your eyes. I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. What do you think will happen next? And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. It could change their perspective on everything. Don't wait even one more second to support the channel and become part of this incredible journey.